Yeah. Well, I think so. I mean, I think people are searching for information, but we've been
Hmm.
bombarded with so much information and so much of it is conflicting that,
Right,
people just don't know what to do. And
right.
like I have, I'm a weight loss coach, and I had someone come to me and ask if, if I thought it was a good idea for him to go on a juicing diet.
Hmm.
And I was just kind of like, I don't even understand where you got this, but,
Hmm.
he's like a corrections officer. He's 6'5". I mean, he's huge and muscular. And I'm like, you can't do your job. You're going to get like
Right,
shanked or something.
right,
Like that is not the route to go.
right.
But when I started talking to him about eating more protein, I don't always, tell people to go keto, but,
Hmm.
eating more protein,
Hmm.
and I'm like, the restaurants, they give you all the rice because it's cheap. And if
Right.
you are going to eat 2 to 4 pounds of meat a day, like, you got to pay for it. You got to learn how to
Absolutely.
cook and all of
Right,
that.
right,
And he was just kind of like, meat. And I'm like, I eat a pound of meat a day. So you, who's a foot taller than me,
right.
why would you not eat more than that? And he was
Right.
like, oh. But it's like, it was just brand new information to him. And I don't, he must have seen something, or, somebody was talking about juicing. And it's like, this juicing thing is probably the worst thing that you could possibly do now that we know what we do about oxalates.
Right. Yeah, I actually did that.
And your sister says you're so smart. You are smart.
Thank you. I actually did a juice fast. I think it was 2011 or 2012. I did a juice fast for 78 days on fruits and vegetable juice. I had just watched the documentary Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead,
Yeah.
and I was all pumped up, and I'm
78
like,
days?
I'm sorry,
78 days?
78 days.
You mean like not 79, not 77, 78 days?
78 days.
You're a
Actually,
better man than me. Like every time I've gone on a fast, it's like
uh,
2.5 days. That's about
well, I
it.
mean, I had the pleasure of enjoying fruit juices, and some of those days I didn't even make the juice either because I just wasn't hungry, or I simply forgot to make the juice. But it was
Okay,
during that
I'm sorry
moment.
about the siren. So we are in
Those
New
are
York
very familiar sounds to me. Yeah.
City.
Um, it was during that moment that I realized the power of fasting. Like that was one of the best feelings I ever had in my life when I reached maybe day 22, 23. Despite the fact that I was drinking a half a gallon of oxalates a day, I felt really good. Um, but once I transitioned out of that, then that's when I found keto and I moved from keto to carnivore.
So
I
you
wouldn't
went from
recommend.
juicing to keto.
Well, I had a bit of a roller coaster experience. I went from juicing, lost 85 pounds, and then what I didn't educate myself on was how to break a fast. So I broke the fast. I broke the fast with prunes, I think. Yeah, I had soaked some prunes in water. Um, that was recommended because it's easy to digest and then you have all the fiber and whatever.
Mhm.
And then I started eating pizza, and then I had cheeseburgers, and I figured, oh, I'll just fast it off again. And then before you know it, I was back in the same routine I was before. So I think keto and carnivore is much more sustainable for me. It works much better for me. I don't feel the need to cheat. If I do cheat, it's not a mistake. I make a conscious decision. You know what? I'm going to enjoy this meal. And then the following day, I'm back on it.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
definitely prefer that over juicing.
Yeah. Now, let's see. Sadzi asks, what is the quickest way to rid of sugar addiction? I think that's a great question. And so many of us are addicted. And,
Yes.
and
Yes.
no one wants to admit it. No one even wants to
Yes.
talk about sugar as a drug. But it's like,
Absolutely.
if you behave like an addict, then why are you not?
Right. Right.
So what are your thoughts?
Um, I have found that the quickest way to get over sugar addiction is to fast for at least 3 days, three
Hmm.
to 4 days on salt water. Um, you can do a keto diet for 14 days, 30 days, but you're going to struggle with it. You're gonna go through a carb withdrawal regardless. But I think a 3 or 4 day fast is gonna push you through those withdrawals the fastest because you're burning your body's carbohydrate sources very quickly. By the third to fourth day, you should enter into ketosis, and you're going to realize that you don't crave sugar or sweet products anymore. Now you either your hunger is completely gone, or you crave high-fat protein meals. So I think fasting is the quickest way to do it by far. And it'll also teach you discipline. You know, if you can fast for 3 days, you're more likely to be able to say no to cheesecake or ice cream or pizza.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
Hi, sis.
Sis go. Oh, do you know that person?
Yes.
Oh. So
Well, she's starting her keto journey too. So I'm glad
awesome.
she joined. Yeah.
Well, welcome aboard. I'm so glad you're doing it. Well, she asked how to break a 4-day water fast. So what would you say?
Other than bone broth, she said. I think eggs, something light. Eggs is pretty good. If you're willing to tolerate raw eggs, I know that may seem crazy to some people, but raw eggs is pretty good. You could just drink that. Don't eat too much fat, because I feel that might put too much stress on your colon. But yeah, I think raw eggs or scrambled eggs, maybe a few pieces of fish is pretty good. Don't go extremely heavy with the big cuts of steak and ribs. Your body will build up tolerance to that over time. But if this is your first 3 to 4 day water fast, if you're not going to do bone broth, you can do maybe a light soup, or you can do eggs or like small pieces of fish, or even liver. Liver would be great. Like some frozen liver. Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah. So let's actually go back to the sugar question for a minute. So when I first went low carb, so I'll go back into my history. I've always struggled with my weight as well, and I actually first did Atkins back in the early 90s. The 4th iteration of his book came out then, and so it was really popular. So I did it then. And I liked it. I actually, did okay, but of course I also love donuts and cake and cookies and so on. So I didn't really stick with that. And then when I was here in New York, I was living in LA at that time, but I went to a natural doctor, and he was a medical doctor, but also practiced, like non-Western medicine and everything. So I went to him, and he did a bunch of tests on me, and he's like, sort of a vegetarian hippie type guy. So I thought he was going to say, okay, you need to juice and do this and that.
Right.
He was like, you're allergic to everything. You should only eat things that don't come in a box or a bag, and you should eat meat and vegetables. And I was like, So he said, you should eat like a cave woman. And that was before that language. And so then the paleo thing blossomed right after. So So for a long time, I did that, and I sort of, maintained a moderate weight, and I wasn't super strict about it. Like, I didn't really count vegetables. I just sort of counted non-vegetable type carbs, and but then I kind of stopped doing that, and I ate whatever, the standard American diet, and then and that's kind of when I gained so much weight. So when I first went into doing keto, like that first week, I thought I was going to die. I mean, it was just awful. And so I felt like for a week, I was just white knuckling it. I was like holding on, and it's just like, I'm going to do it. But it was really hard. And I was like nodding off in front of the computer screen, not having that sugar was, that was huge. And, at the time, I worked in an office building where people used to keep, I knew all of the people who had bowls of chocolate on their desks around the building. And so, around 3 o'clock, I would do my cycle through and pick up chocolate for people. So when I first stopped, people were like, hey, where you been? I haven't seen you in a while. But it was super hard. And all I can say is with sugar, like, you have to do, at least in the beginning, total abstinence. It's like with alcohol, if you're an alcoholic and you're trying to stop drinking, you can't, just have one shot a day. It's got to be over. And then, your taste buds will readjust, and all of a sudden, you know, things like red peppers will taste sweet to you, and
Right.
you know, lots of other things will taste sweet. And I think Robert asked how to diagnose it. As far as, you know, in my opinion, you know, you have to be the one to decide. So if you feel like you can't go 3 days without eating something sweet, you're addicted to sugar. Whether it's a
Everyone's
problem,
addicted.
yeah, everyone's
Everyone's
addicted.
addicted.
So
Everyone.
whether it's a problem or not is another question. You have to
Right.
ask yourself, how much money are you spending on junk food? You know,
Right.
are you comfortable with that amount of money?
Right.
I use that program mint.com to look at my finances, and I did this before I started dieting, and I realized that I was spending, I mean, a huge percentage of my monthly income on food, and I was just like, how is
Yeah.
this possible?
Yeah.
So,
I know
you know,
exactly
that
what you mean.
too. Yeah. Do you have that experience too?
Oh, absolutely. When I first started keto, my sister can attest to this. I would drag myself just to get out of bed. I couldn't concentrate, always felt tired, very irritable, very irritable. Um, didn't want to talk, very low mood. Um, I don't know, I just felt very just weak and lethargic and fatigued. And then if I ever had that bump in sugar, I was right back. And that's when I knew, like, if I can't go a few days without sugar, clearly there's a problem. And a lot of people, they don't want to look at sugar as an addiction because it's a food product.
Mm-hmm.
But all the symptoms are the same as any other addiction. If you remove it from your diet and you see you're having these withdrawal symptoms, first of all, any substance you remove, if it causes withdrawal symptoms, you were an addict, regardless of what it was. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're removing sugar and you're experiencing these symptoms, the same symptoms that I mentioned, more than likely you were addicted to sugar. But
Yeah.
you have to abstain from it completely. If you're going to continue eating, abstain, I say at least 2 weeks, 30 days. If you're going to fast, 3 to 4 days, and you pretty much knocked it out. Now, the main thing with that is to not go back into eating sweet foods, especially artificial sweeteners. Those have a tendency to reignite sugar cravings, and people will often find themselves slipping back into eating sweet foods when they eat, you know, foods with sucralose or stevia, aspartame, all of these artificial sweeteners that are actually toxic.
Yeah, I agree. And I find that artificial sweeteners, my body treats them as if they're sugar. So,
Right,
you know, when I was on keto, sometimes I'd want something sweet and I'd think, well, let me get a diet soda. That'll help. And it's
right,
like, you know, all of a sudden my body's like, whoa.
right,
You know, and I'm out, kicked out of ketosis. And it's like,
right, right.
man, and it wasn't even a real soda.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.